Aloha, and welcome to the 2022 interviews that we're doing for our mayoral candidates. Today we have Mr. Bissen with us. Thank you so much for being part of this. And we have our interviewers. I just want to introduce them to you first. Dick Mayer, who's been an active part of our community for a former professor, but has been really involved in a lot of legislation that happens here in our county. Lucianne Dene, who is probably everyone knows Lucianne in terms of her action, in terms of her work with the Sierra Club and Maui Tomorrow and all our water issues. Asia Iyer is also on the Maui board, and she has been active in so many different issues that have to do with our county, as well as our other interviewer, Kai Nishiki, also, who's been very active in supporting issues, especially our coastline and other things. So they all have a lot of significant questions to ask. And but before we start, Rick, many of us don't know you who may be on this call. And if you reflect back, I mean, all the way back to the days you played high school football to the present moment, what are the two things that you are most proud of during this whole time stretch?
Well, I don't know if you're talking about professionally or personally, but I guess I would focus on my family. I'm deeply rooted in my faith and my family. So I would say I'm most proud of having my three adult daughters. They're 26, 29, and 32, and the three grandsons that from two of my oldest ones. And so they would be 10, 7, and 1. I'm a proud son of Maui, and I guess I formed or learned my cultural values from my home that I was raised in by Edna and Richard Bissen, Edna Nicole Bissen and Richard Bissen, and I'm proud to come from that line, that strong line of Maui families, from Kukahikos, Auveloas to Pahukoas and Bissens and Nakor. So I guess those are the two things I would focus on that I'm proud of. And I received my formal education in California and in Honolulu in terms of college and law school, but my cultural values were formed right here on Maui.
And professionally, what would be the one thing that you would say that you're most proud of in terms of your accomplishments that you have?
I think I'm proud of the most recent time that I just worked, which was as the chief judge here in our circuit, because we were able to restart jury trials here on Maui, the first circuit to do so of the 4 circuits that make up Hawaii. We had a great team of people, worked together with the prosecutors, public defenders, the Bar Association, the Department of Health, of course, the judiciary, and we were able to work as a team, work during some very difficult times, as all of us were going through those times. And I played a small role in getting the groups together and making a significant, benefit to our community by being able to restart those. What that did, it was allowed people who were waiting for their trials, most people who were incarcerated, to be able to get their cases heard. People who were victims of crimes were able to get justice for their cases. Attorneys were able to move their cases instead of having them sort of be backed up. Courts could move their cases. So, and then we could get our public citizens to come into court in a safe way and to go home safe and not anyone get sick. So I thought that was significant, maybe because it was the most recent thing that I was involved in before retiring.
Great, thank you for that. Dick Mayer will be next.
Yep. You want to replace the present administration. And so I'd like to get some assessment. And this is the question. Please analyze the effectiveness of the present Maui County administration and its operations. What's going well, what's not going so well, because you would like to take over and make changes, I suspect.
Yeah, I'm not here to, judge what somebody else has done without knowing exactly what they were dealing with. I can only tell you what the effects are or the results. I can't tell you why things are. I suspect the biggest point I would bring up to your question, Mr. Mayor, sorry, I'm calling you Mr. Mayor, but that's really your name, is that I think there's been a lack of leadership in our county, and I think that's been demonstrated at the highest level as well as in certain departments. And I think, and all you need to do is ask somebody just ask a random person that you walk up to who's impacted by decisions or lack of decisions for our community and our county. I think that there's a lot of, what's the word I want to use? Maybe confusion might be the right word about exactly how decisions are being made or not made. And not making a decision, in my opinion, is a decision because you maintain the status quo. I think we shouldn't be operating under a sense of fear or even a sense of uncertainty. I think it's okay to try new things. I think it's good to be innovative and to be bold and not always be trapped in the prison of one idea or doing it the old way or this is the way it's always been done, so we do it again. It used to be called the 50-year rule when I worked in, obviously, government. When you ask somebody why you do something a certain way, they say, well, this is the way we've done it for the last 50 years. There's really no understanding of why it's done that way. So I think there are things we can do to be more efficient as a county. I think people are also risk averse. Now, as an attorney, as a trained attorney, educated attorney, I totally understand giving advice to your client. And ultimately the client makes the decision, but there's it's kind of the easy way to say, well, let's not try something new because we've never been sued by doing it the old way. I feel like doing it, trying something to be more efficient and more transparent is what the public wants and what the public deserves. And I feel like we don't have to settle. We don't have to accept what our situation is. I think we can aspire to be better, and we should be better. We should be more innovative and efficient and bold.
Let me follow up that then and ask what you would do differently. What initiatives would you take? What improvements do you think you could bring to the county? You may not do the things that were done in the past. You have probably some creative ideas on how the county can be even better. Maui no Ka'oi on steroids.
Well, we'll settle for Maui no Ka'oi. How's that?
Okay.
I think that one of the things that comes to my mind is in the first 180 days, I'd like to have 100 ADUs or accessory dwelling units approved. Accessory dwelling units being cottages, being ohana dwellings that people can put on their property. The council's already approved these structures being put. I think that's the quickest way to get affordable housing built in our community. There's already water and sewer on the property. Depending on the size of the lot, I don't understand why we don't have more of that happening right now. But what I'd want to do in a Bissen administration is have, for example, floor plans already not only approved, but permitted. So for example, a studio, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, I'd like to see us run those through all the different departments that are required to sign off and have those pre-approved. So if an individual or family wants to build one of those particular ones, not a custom one, that would be pre-approved. They can get the material list, they can get the contractor, they can do owner builder, and they can get that structure put up on their property. You still got to go through, the inspectors on, of course, plumbing, electrical, and the others that are required. But I don't see any reason why we can't accelerate that. I would push for that. I'm not saying they'd be built in 180 days. I'm saying they'd be approved. And again, these are for homes that would be connected to the county water and the county sewer. If you're in a cesspool or septic situation, that would require a different requirement because you'd have to decide if there's enough capacity in the sewer or the septic. But if you're hooked up to county, there's no reason why you can't get these, again, pre-approved, which I think is an efficiency that we should be looking at, and get people in there on their own properties with a second dwelling.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yes,
What initiatives by the current administration do you support, and will you continue to support specifically?
I think they are trying to go after the illegal vacation rentals. I think that's something I would want to continue, maybe even increase. I think there are, let me see, I think they're trying to put some effort into the issues of, I want to say climate change. I'm not sure what other term to use. I understand they've put some money in the budget towards that. So I guess those are two that come to mind off the top of my head.
And
Thank you.
why don't we follow up next with Asia Iyer?
Hi, Judge Bissen. Thanks for running.
Aloha.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So when one runs for office, and those of us who've run for office know this, you're asked to weigh in on a lot of issues and to give your opinions on a lot of myriad of problems, issues, concerns people have. And so in some respects, the campaign is an opportunity to learn about things maybe we didn't know about before that was happening in Maui.
Absolutely.
What issues have you have been brought to your attention that maybe you didn't know about before, and how has your opinions changed as you've learned more from the people of Maui County?
Well, let me just I'll answer that in reverse. What I have learned about the people of Maui is they understand the issues that impact them very, very well. They, what I'm surprised by is the number of unsolicited comments and opinions and offers from really well-intentioned people on how to resolve issues, whether it's the issue on water, housing, permitting. So many people have some ideas, and you can tell they think about this. For example, while sitting in traffic, they all have solved the traffic problem while they're sitting in it, and are able to communicate what we should or shouldn't be doing. I'll give you a quick example. When Kihei had construction going on at Pilani and at South Kihei at the exact same time, and people were really adamant about saying, whose idea was this to have two projects going on at the same time? Why wouldn't we just do one and leave the other open? Where is that north-south collector road that we've been promised and talked about? So people know. I think the solutions that we're going to find, and I'm convinced we're going to find solution. That's not just political talk. I think it's going to come right from our people who maybe feel ignored, marginalized, not included, no seat at the table. But as far as what I've learned everything. Although I'm the only person who was running who's actually run a department, I ran the prosecutor's office 2 different times. I was number 2 at the AG's, and I ran the Department of Public Safety, which is one of the largest state departments in the state of Hawaii. So I know what it's like to be the person proposing the budget, having to thin the budget, having to, deal with unions, deal with employees, deal with all sorts of issues that come up when you're responsible for a department. So I knew a lot about perhaps the prosecutor's office, and like I said, dealing with the back of the house as a director. I guess what I'm learning more about is budget. The actual entire budget of the county. The difference between CIP funds that that can lapse and other funds, federal dollars that come in, how they can be spent. Like I said, I'm just honing in on those issues more than previously. This whole issue of housing. I mean, I'm not a housing person. That's not my background. But I've learned so much from so many about how we can do those things better. The whole issue, even on climate change. I mean, that has also been an area that I've been educated on more and more, as well as invasive species. I'm not a hunter. I didn't know a lot about axis deer. I know way more about that than I've ever thought I'd have to know. And it's mostly from people calling me or stopping me or seeing me and saying, "Hey, I have an idea," or this is what we should be thinking about doing. So I'm going to answer the question, Asia, and say just about everything is what I'm learning.
Well, and just kind of a follow up on there, when or if you're elected mayor, I don't see those suggestions the flow might come even more, right? So do you have a plan for perhaps involving the local people more in decision making than maybe we've seen in past administrations?
I don't know how much other administrations have included our local residents. I mean, I know we have boards and commissions made up of local residents. I know the mayor plays a very important role in appointing those. Of course, you have to have people apply. I feel like I'm someone who's developed a lot of relationships over my years growing up here and knowing people here, going to school with people here, working with people here, being related to people from here. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why we have and develop relationships. And so I think I'm somebody who people don't mind working with. I'd like to think that, but we'll see who applies. I think to answer your question, though, yes, the answer is yes. For example, my guess is that at some point Lucianne's going to ask me a water question tonight, and so my thought is, at least on the big three, I want to talk. At some point, we'll talk about East Maui, the Nava'i Eha, and Komohana in West Maui. I mean, I don't know why we don't already have people from those areas giving advice to any mayor, about what's happening in their area. And I don't mean a lot of people, because sometimes that can get cumbersome. I mean, a couple of people who can give you advice maybe every month to say, well, this is what the yield is, this is how the distribution is going. I mean, just pretty simple stuff, not unlike a budget where you say, hey, how much did we bring in this month? How much did we spend this month? Are we in the black? Are we in the red? What's our water flow and our rates going? I mean, as a mayor, I wouldn't want all the details as much as I'd want sort of the snapshot, because I don't want to wait till we're in the drought to be told, hey, we stopped getting water 2 months ago. You know what I'm saying? So my approach, I think, is pretty, common sense, but it would be if people were willing to sit in a room with me for, an hour a month and say, hey, this is what's going on, and this is what I project is going to happen. This is how I think we might want to get ahead of this. I mean, that's just the way my brain works. I mean, some of the things I see we deal with are recurring, and it's almost like 51st dates. It's like we don't know it's going to come. Like drought season comes every year, right? I mean, we all know there's going to be drought. So what are we doing to get ready for that? I have to assume that there are good people working in these positions that know this and must prepare and do this. I mean, we get the reports every, okay, hurricane season, get your kit ready, right? Have your water, your toilet paper, your Spam, whatever. We know that, we do that. So I'm just thinking maybe we can do more of that in just regular government stuff.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Go ahead, Kai.
Thank you, Asia.
Yes, Kai, are you ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Mr. Bissen, there's been a lot of talk in the community that Linda Lingle has been involved in your campaign and will be involved in your administration, even as a managing director. Will you confirm that?
I'll deny it. I won't confirm it because it's not true. I think that's a yes or no, if that's what you're asking me. The governor has been my friend. I'm going to answer you. But I wanted to answer the managing director part that you wanted me to confirm. But confirming means it's yes, and I'm denying it. First of all, I haven't asked anybody to be in any position in any cabinet because I'm not that presumptuous. And it might just be that I'm a superstitious trial attorney who likes to wait until the jury decides what it is and not what I think it is. We're working really hard. My goal is to be the mayor of the county of Maui. And so that's obviously the goal, but I'm not so confident that I think I can pick a cabinet. First of all, I've known the governor for a very long time. Since she appointed me, I served on her cabinet. She appointed me prosecutor in 1995. That's when we never knew each other before that, the day I interviewed with her for the position. I was selected. I served as her prosecuting attorney. I also served as Kimo Apana's prosecuting attorney when he asked me to serve. When Alan Arakawa became mayor, he went in another direction, selected my very good friend, David Tengan. And I was asked to join the governor's cabinet in Honolulu. and I became the first deputy attorney general under Mark Bennett, who was the one who selected me. And then when the director of public safety stepped down and there was a vacancy, the governor asked me if I would fill in that space, which I did. If I wanted to be part of the governor's team, I would have stayed in Honolulu. We had bought a home. I had moved my family there. But there was an opening for a judicial position here on Maui. And of course, I wanted to return to my home. And I did.
So,
and I left that.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I'd like to just get back to the question. So is she involved in your campaign in any way right now? Or
I asked her
in
for,
the past?
Not in the past. No, I've never run before, but I've called her for advice when I felt I needed to ask her. But I asked many, many people for advice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and we'll have Lucianne next.
Aloha. Hi again.
Aloha.
Nice to see you, Rick.
Thank you, Lucianne.
So I do have a water question for you, a little bit different one. So the county water department has traditionally sided with, shall we say, large water controllers and not sided with people in the community who are seeking a better review of the allocation of streams. Example, just 5 days ago, the A&B and the State Land Board and Maui County jointly appealed a decision that the Land Board had to hold a contested case earlier this year about leases in East Maui, the temporary leases they give. The Sierra Club had asked for a contested case. They were denied. They appealed to the circuit court. The circuit court said, of course, you need to give an opportunity for a contested case. The contested case went on. And just 5 days ago, our county, along with A&B and the State Land Board, appealed the very decision that citizens should have the right to a contested case about something like water on public land. So if you are mayor, what would be your stand on the county continually siding with the largest water interests when citizens are asking for the law to be followed and water to be restored to their streams?
I'm sorry. I'm going to sound like an attorney or maybe even a judge when I answer the first part of your question, Sam, but I want you to let me complete that with the second part of my answer. You know, when it comes to a decision in court, it doesn't matter if you come from a large corporation or if you come from, you know, the little guy involved in the situation. What matters is the argument you make. You don't pick the side with the loudest voice. You pick the side with the strongest argument. And that's how it should always work. So whether it's the big company or the county or the small guy or the homeowner or the kalo farmer, what's usually going to make the difference is who's got the stronger, usually legal argument. Now, having said that, I think a Bissen administration would want to make sure that our kalo farmers, and you know, they play a special role in our, not just our current community, but really our history. And so I think we must, you know, protect and restore our kalo farmers to make sure that they can have the water they need to do that. And I don't, as far as the other persons who need, of course, would not to the exclusion of drinking water, but if we're just talking about farmers or ag, I think clearly kalo farmers have a place of a higher category, if you will, in my mind and in my administration. Okay,
so quick follow-up. So say you're elected mayor, this is going to come to the Intermediate Court of Appeals. Would you take a second look at it at all to see if the county really belongs in this appeal?
Sure. I mean, I'd want to sit with legal counsel. I mean, that's why you have corporation counsel. I know for some people that's they don't want to hear that. But I mean, whoever it is giving you legal advice, if you're not listening to it, you're a fool. I don't care if you've been a judge or an attorney. You got to listen to people whose job it is. I mean, presuming they know how to do their job and are doing it correctly, you got to allow people to do their job. Now, if you see that they clearly are missing something or are biased, then you're required to step in, right? I mean, you have to say something about that. But if people are giving you advice, it's your job to pick the advice. And I tell you, the way people choose advice, Lucian, is it depends on your level of risk aversion. Some people are more risk averse than others. Some people take calculated risks. Some people take no risks. Some people take high risk. I've seen it all. And the job of the attorney is to tell you what your chances of success are. And they'll tell you, this is a good legal argument. This is a poor legal argument. We should assert this. We should not assert this. But you ultimately, as the client, you make the call. You decide. So would I look at it? Of course. Would I try to step in the role and, be the decision maker like a judge in my old job? No.
So you would not look at the moral authority that the consul.
No, I think
that the administration would or would not take, whether the legal argument is as sound or, maybe it's a toss-up, maybe it's 50-50, go either way.
And that's why I said your risk aversion comes into play. I think I included morality into that part of my answer to you. The legal argument has to be made because that's what wins arguments in court. But if you have a strong moral argument that can overcome that, and you can say, and I've seen that a lot. I'll give you a real quick example if you allow me. And I'm a judge and I'm sentencing somebody for shoplifting. It matters to me if it was a single mom shoplifting diapers or if it was the guy shoplifting a bottle of vodka. For me, I don't just want to know that this guy stole, $25 worth of stuff or $100 or this lady stole it. I ask the prosecutor, what was it that she stole? And I do something different in what I give to somebody if they were stealing diapers or milk for their kid. Yeah, it's against the law, but there's a moral side to that versus somebody who was stealing alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, of course you take that into account.
Thank you. Back to you, Paul.
Great. Mr. Bissen, I have a question around our charter amendments. We have 13 charter amendments that'll be on our ballot. Sure. Are there any of these 13 that you are averse to, that you feel shouldn't be passed or you wouldn't vote for yourself?
Wow, I wish I'd have reviewed all of them before. There is one that I was concerned or that I feel like maybe they need more information on, Paul, and that would be whether or not it would be wise to split up the Department of Housing and Human Concerns into two departments. And if I can explain, I think we should first find out what is it about the department. And I'm guessing those of you on the Charter Commission went through this already. So I'm hoping you folks did all the legwork and the background on it. But what is it about that department now that requires that it be split rather than supplemented? Like if you think, well, we need to do more in housing, housing needs a couple more bodies or personnel, then maybe that's the cure. But if you split it up, you're asking the taxpayers to now have two sets of administrative resources. So you're adding people anyway. Now you're going to give the director of human concerns is going to have their staff, and now housing is going to have their staff. And does it justify that? I don't know. I'd like to know what the numbers are. I think we're adding 157 new positions in this $400 million increased budget that just passed. At some point, once you create a position in county government, you're not going to go backwards. And people are going to have, union rights. There are going to be all sorts of things that are created when you add. It's very, very difficult. I know this firsthand in my workings as a director, that you're not, unless it's a grant position that's only for a year or two, that's going to go away. But most positions, once you put them in there, they're there forever. And so, as far as increasing government,
I understand.
That's my concern.
I understand your concern and questions, and certainly being one of the charter people that were, 11 of us that really discussed this in length. One of the biggest issues that we face is affordable housing. And if we look at the way it's been at this point in time, it has not been effective in addressing that long-term need that we've had. So, and part of it was so that we would have a department that would be dedicated to this. We have issues of homelessness and people who are in crisis. So that is health and human concerns, and that usually takes precedent. So affordable housing always is in the back. How can we bring that now forward so we can address the affordable housing issue? Now, if we start investing in purchasing land on a county level, if we start putting in infrastructure, which is needed, I think, if we're going to really address affordable housing, the question then is, for those who then have those properties, who purchase those properties, what would it be in terms of having it be something that would be affordable in perpetuity? So we look down 7 generations, they're affected? Or is it something that would be put into the market if they were to pay a certain amount of money to pay back some of the property and infrastructure costs? So, I guess it's a whole issue.
I'm going to answer your question this way, Paul. If the county is going to go into the business of managing housing, for example, leasehold, then maybe you make a good point. But if these are going to be fee simple, I don't see how the county, even if you make it in perpetuity, has much of anything to do with the program once the home is purchased. I mean, the terms of the contract is what's going to dictate that any further transactions, any future transactions, anything passed on to the next generation, or if you sell it, does it have to go back to the county? Does it, have you met the minimum term, 10-year, 20-year, before you can experience the equity gain in the home? I mean, there's so many different ways to, I guess, set this up or put it in a contract. I don't understand how a Department of Housing would have anything to do with that unless the county was going to be the landlord and the county was going to hold on to this property and somehow need to revisit. But once a house is sold, it belongs to the homeowner. It's theirs. They do whatever they do with it. And if there's a requirement that they hold on to it, then they hold on to it. I can tell you, it's not going to go back to the Department of Housing if there's an issue. It's going to go to court, and it's going to be Corporation Counsel that's going to decide if they've followed the terms of the contract or if they haven't, or maybe it'll go to planning or somebody's responsible for permitting if they do something that's not allowed.
Yep.
So I'm trying to figure out how housing gets involved in affordable. I know they got the same word, affordable housing and housing, but I don't think it was meant to be that. I think it was meant to get people into transition housing. It was meant to get people into, get them from a temporary to a permanent. But once it's permanent and you buy it, I don't see how you go back to housing.
Well, again, Nahali O'Malley, I think, is a good model in terms of
Yes,
having it be affordable in perpetuity. So the question is, can we adopt that model on a county level? Is that something that you'd be open to? Because again,
yes,
how do we address it? Okay.
Absolutely would be. But is that leasehold, Paul? Do you know if those are leasehold?
It goes into a community land trust, basically.
Right.
They stay within that pocket. If they have to sell, then there's a formula where they would, but it would remain affordable though. That's the idea.
I totally agree with that model, by the way. I'm a fan of Habitat for Humanity. I'm a fan of the Hawaiian Homes leasehold. I think we should definitely be thinking about going leasehold on some of our property owned by the county. If you look at Hawaiian homelands, and we got lots of people living on the land. We got a lot of people on the wait list. In full disclosure, I'm a beneficiary as a native Hawaiian, also. So I would say to you that those homes are in perpetuity. They can only, when a Hawaiian family leaves, it gets given to another native Hawaiian family. Blood quantum is an issue that's going to come up more and more as as time goes on. There aren't going to be as many folks that have half Hawaiian or so. But I'm just saying that program works for us because it's leasehold. And there are a lot of people that come up to me and talk about we should do leasehold. And I'll tell you the number one reason is because you don't have to come up with a down payment like you do on a fee simple house. And people can't come up with that money. So they can come up with the monthly, but not the down payment. So leasehold solves that problem.
That's right. Great.
And keeps the property in that perpetuity you were talking about. It keeps it in that pool of homes that, and investors are less likely to purchase leasehold properties, right? They don't want those. And so when that family is done living there, their lease is over, it can go to another family, but it'll always stay, in my mind, with the Kama'aina family.
Great. Thank you for that answer. Dick, you're next.
Okay. A lot of times we've heard on your campaign and the brochures and things, the word Kama'aina. Who is the Kama'aina and why do you use it?
That was not something that just was a whimsical decision. If you look up the definition of the term, it will say to you native born. It does not mean native Hawaiian. That would be Kanaka Maoli. But Kama'aina can also mean someone who is familiar with that place or is from that place. So the term is used as a resident, Dick, and that's Kama'aina, someone of this place. So it's not an ethnic term as much as it is a term describing someone's familiarity with this place or their place. So someone who chooses and makes this place their home. When you talk about somebody making it their home and being Kama'aina, that means they contribute to this place. They contribute in whatever ways, whether they do beach cleanups, whether they pay their taxes, whether they, help out with the local, coach sports or whatever they do. I mean, there's lots of ways people give to their community, like when you contribute to the community. I mean, there's lots. So I chose that word very carefully, but the term we use is Kama'aina prosperity because that's what we're looking to do, have our whole community prosper. So I think it's the right term.
Well, let me extend that now. One of the problems we have in Maui is that most of the hotels are owned by international corporations and financiers in Wall Street, what have you. And for example, this past year, they raised their rates 30-40%. They did not hire back as many of the employees as had been hired before the pandemic. The question is, it seems like a lot of money must be leaving this island and not going to the workers in the hotels who do not even have a living wage to be able to afford to build a house. What can we do about this disparity of outside investors really screening out so much of the money that supposedly the tourists are spending here?
Your question is, what can the county do to private business to make them keep money here?
Either helping the unions or helping organize or putting some of the facts out on the table so that the public becomes more aware of it. This is stuff all done behind the scenes that money, it's like whether you be in the Caribbean or Central America where the big corporations came in and made loads of money out of the people picking the bananas. Well, here we have a similar situation, different industry. And I don't know if the people really realize how much money is leaving the island.
Well, I think the focus should really be how much money is staying in the island. I think for-profit corporations, obviously, whether you're talking about Walmart, whether you're talking about the brand new Chick-fil-A, these are all, national, some of maybe international corporations. Home Depot, I mean, all of these big ones, whether they're a hotel or whether they are. And by the way, speaking of Home Depot, it looks like they don't hire a lot of people too, because you can't find somebody to help you when you look around that store. I mean, so, I feel like it's an employee's market, by the way, if we're going to talk about who gets employed and who doesn't get employed, because I think that, the pandemic taught a lot of lessons to people. And, I think some people chose not to go back. Now, I think there are many, 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 many reasons for that. I'm not going to put them all into one category. But to focus on your question, Dick, I'm not sure what the county can do. I know the county through the council sets the tax rates for the transient accommodation tax for the short-term rentals for hotels, and I know a large part of that when I go and speak out in the Lahaina community there are a lot of business owners and people out there who feel like they pay a lot of the taxes that the county collects, and are always curious about what do they get in return for that portion. So, I mean, I don't know how a county, municipality can force a national, international, even a local company to keep its money here, except to hire their citizens, to hire their,
possibly by raising the property tax rate. That's something the county can do. We have also wages that are paid to the work, a living wage, and working with the unions, actually, because I think that one of our problems on Maui is that many of the workers don't go back to work because they're not going to make enough to make a living here, and many of them are now leaving the island. We need
I think you're right. I think you're right, and I think the legislature, increasing the minimum wage, which still seems kind of on the lower side to people having to survive on Maui, people having to work 2 or 3 jobs because they don't make enough living wage on just one job. I mean, I think you're talking to the choir, Dick. I mean, I think everybody sees that, and a lot of people are impacted by that. But at least some people do have jobs if that wage is enough for them to secure a place to live and have a life, because I don't know what their spouse or partner or whatever their situation is. I think it would be very difficult, except for, like you said, raising taxes. But what happens is when we raise taxes, they raise their rates, right? I mean, they just pass it all on. They pass all of the cost on to the consumer, to the
in the case of the hotel,
tourist.
in the case of the hotel, I mean, Wailea, they're charging $1,000 a night to stay there. A year ago or 2 years ago, they were charging $600. They're making enormous windfall profits. We have other questions. We don't have to go into this. It's a deeper discussion, but it's an important one.
But thank you for letting me think about that, because I had not thought about that before.
Okay, I'll let somebody else go ahead.
Okay, Kai, we'll have you next.
Thank you, Mr. Bissen. I'm glad you brought up DHHL. That leads me to my question. In 2003, when you were Deputy Attorney General for the state of Hawaii, you, Attorney General Mark Bennett, and DHHL Chair Micah Kane met with Bank of America representatives. This was reported at a November 10th, 2003 Waimanalo Neighborhood Board meeting by Micah Kane. Kane was responding to questions about why the Lingle administration was working behind the scenes to undermine Bank of America's commitment to the Federal Reserve to make $150 million in FHA 247 mortgage loans to Hawaiians on Hawaiian homelands. This commitment was in response to allegations of discrimination against Hawaiians. These actions by the Lingle administration undermined the abilities of Hawaiian homeland beneficiaries to hold Bank of America accountable, and allowed Bank of America to complete a multi-billion-dollar acquisition without complying with the Federal Reserve order. Over the last few years, the Maui County Council has sought to hold Bank of America accountable. Given your prior direct involvement in negotiating the weakening of the commitment and the fact that Micah Kane has donated $4,000 to your campaign, can you tell us what we can expect from a Bissen administration in terms of taking action to ensure that Bank of America is held accountable?
Yeah, I don't know that I had any direct contact like you just said. I might have been at a meeting that you just mentioned. I don't even recall that. But I know this: more Hawaiians were put on land when Governor Lingle and Micah Kane were in charge of Hawaiian homelands than any time before then and since then. So if you're talking about the impact on beneficiaries, you might want to check on that to see if that's correct. If there was ever in the history of the state of Hawaii, more Hawaiian homes built and Hawaiians put on land during that time versus any other time. I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. If the law allows, I'm going to go with a stronger legal argument. If the council agrees that Native Hawaiians should have been compensated or somehow benefited through the, Bank of America transaction, then of course I would support that.
But what specifically, what kind of action would you ensure to make sure that Bank of America is held accountable?
I don't even know what the issue is. I don't even understand what you're saying happened or didn't happen. So I'd want to ask the attorneys involved. I mean, I don't have an answer for you because I'm not even familiar with what it is Hawaiians did not get or should have received. So I mean, if I knew what
$150 million in FHA 247 mortgage loans. That's the issue.
To Native Hawaiians or to the department?
To Hawaiians on Hawaiian homelands. It's supposed to be.
Yeah, if people have a claim, then they should make the claim, and I wouldn't stand in the way of that. That's my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have Lucianne next.
Thank you. Well, surprise, surprise, this isn't a water question. You may be familiar, Mr. Bissen, that about a year ago, 500 acres in central Maui, commonly known as Waiale, it was a proposed residential project that A&B had put through the various boards and commissions and rezoning process, but it is also a traditional burial ground. And the county council and the mayor supported, the current mayor supported it being purchased and left as a memorial to the hundreds of people, iwi kupuna, that are found there. So this is an area of sand dunes and, rolling areas. Portions of it have been sand mined, but a lot of it has not been sand mined and is natural dune systems that are often used for iwi kupuna, traditional interment. So what would your administration's vision be for what becomes of this 500 acres? It is owned by the county of Maui, and it would need to be administered in some way. Would your administration see that it is used in any particular way? If other developments encountered iwi kupuna, would your administration recommend that they be relocated to this acreage because there's already iwi kupuna there? Did you have any thoughts on that?
I think we have a burial council to make those decisions, and they have a protocol in place already. I am not. It would not be my first instinct to move iwi from one location to another location just because that other location is a designated burial site. There are other reasons why you leave iwi where you find it. And that's when you consult with their ancestors or their descendants to ask what they think about it. Before you talk about moving anything of historical significance, you have to ask yourself if you have other ways of mitigation. Can you go around? Are there other things you can do? Can you move it? Like honokahua, can you move the location? So I think that it's probably a last resort to move it anywhere. But if your question is, if you had to move it, would you move it there? I suppose that would seem like, at first, it would seem like a logical idea. But the first part of your question was about what to do with that area. Obviously, they bought it to preserve it. They bought it so that no one else would do anything with it. I thought that was an interesting purchase, by the way, because I'm not sure if A&B would have or could have deeded it to the county instead of purchasing it, since it couldn't be used for anything else anyway. It would not have been an appropriate. Any developer would have known they could not have developed it because they already found what they found, and they already decided that, I'm pretty sure that no one would have permitted anything to be built there. So I'm not sure of what use it would have had to A&B anyway. And the county decided to, buy it. But I think they bought it to keep it open. And I think that's what they're going to continue to do, and that's what I would do. But I don't know that I would just move something there just to move it there. Go ahead.
And would you see your administration providing any type of funding or support for the management of the burial preserve and the land?
I don't know. I don't know if that's even been requested or if that's necessary or if it's just something that they'll, build, something around it or make it. Sometimes when you have areas like this, you don't want to draw attention to it. And other times you want to, make a memorial around it and I guess keep it open. But if you're talking about 500 acres, that's a lot to consider. Again, I'm not the expert on this, Lucian. I would want to consult the Hawaiian community and especially those that work with the Burial Council and Shifty and all the others that work on this stuff daily, because they must have a list of criteria or even a list of alternatives that they follow.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the next question, and it has to do really with some of the things that have happened recently where we have our own agricultural department, and now we're looking at having our own water authority. And just today, actually, the County Council passed Resolution 22-203, which empowers the county to determine the minimum wage. It's something that's put out to the legislation for them to consider. Where do you stand on having this type of home rule where we have more empowerment here in the local community versus what's happening and giving that to the state where they may not be sensitive to our real needs that we have here?
Well, we have representatives that represent us in the state legislature and in the Senate. So we do have a say in what happens in the state government. But you're right. Obviously, we think we know how to rule better for ourselves and our people than we think Honolulu does. But again, I don't want to miss the point that we have people that we elect from our districts and our Senate districts who are supposed to have our best interests when they go to Honolulu and the state legislature. If you're asking, do I think it's a good idea that the council can set minimum wage? Sure. I think when we do that, though, we do have to consult, small businesses, the backbone of our community. We got to find out what impacts that's going to have on them. I think we got to be cognizant of the difference between a large corporation, X amount of employees and smaller ones, because we don't want to put people out of business because they can't afford to keep up with what happens, or they're going to pass it on to their customers, et cetera. So, I think it's a good idea. We just got to be able to think about how we would want to implement that. You brought up something at the beginning of your question, Paul. Can you mention that again?
Well, let me just continue on this point
Okay.
here about in terms of, let's say, our greater home rule, what about happened with our school system right now? Certainly a lot of money goes over to Oahu, and then we look at our schools infrastructure, our challenges that we have with retaining teachers and the wages. What would you do then? Would you support having our own school board here on the county, as most counties have throughout the United States?
Well, we're the only state in the country whose department has a state Department of Education. All the other states are by school districts. Now, I'm going to tell you the good and the bad. I think for the most part, our schools, at least the resources, are pretty even. When you talk about the Department of Education, I'm not talking about private schools, of course. And what happens in other locations is if you have a wealthy zip code, in your school district's going to have all the latest and the greatest stuff. And if you come from a poorer neighborhood, then your school district is going to get less. And one of the things that a state system is supposed to prevent is from that happening, and that there is an even distribution among the state, among the schools within the state, so that that does not happen. I don't know if that's happening or not happening. And as far as salaries are concerned, I don't know if that's set by the state DOE, if the county has anything to do with being able to give their teachers a different salary. Most state employees, regardless of where you are, you get an SR rating and you get paid the wage. Whether you're working Honolulu or you work in Maui, we don't have a COLA or cost of living allowance like the federal government does. So I don't know. I'd want to ask the teachers what they think, or the parents and the students about which way is better, because there are pros and cons. I remember you talked about the Department of Agriculture as a new department. It's going to be very different, from the State Department of Ag, which is mostly a regulatory agency. Maybe 85% of what they do is that. Our county Department of Agriculture is going to be more of an advocacy agency, I believe, is what it was set up to be and do. Mm-hmm. So I think, I don't know if it's so much home rule as they just have a different function, but the key is for us to align our county with our state, with the federal Department of Agriculture, so that we're getting the funding and, access to grants that our folks can get. When you talk to farmers, one of the hesitations they had about the Department of Ag coming to county is it would add another layer of regulation. And that's how they see the Department of Ag is a regulatory. So hopefully we'll convince them that what was created on the county level was to help them with getting their products to market.
Great, thank you for that. And this will be our last questions from our interviewers.
Okay.
Dick?
Okay, Dick? Very good. The charter amendments that are going up there right now, are the ones that you really tout, that you really think we need to get done so that Maui will be operating in a better manner? And I can give some examples if you're not so familiar with them.
Yeah, we did a talk on each of those, and we brought them to the attention of at the time, I think there were 11, that we brought to the attention of the public, just so that we weren't taking positions on them as much as we were just wanting to educate the public and say, well, this is what it is. Kawanoi Batangan was our speaker, and he, of course, one of the Charter Commission members. So he was able to describe what the purpose behind it being recommended. So, off the top of my head, Dick, not really.
How would you, one of the roles that the mayor has is to appoint people to the 35 boards and commissions that we have, really a part of the government that most people don't really know about, and it doesn't get the publicity usually, except for the Planning Commission, maybe the Police Commission. The appointments to those boards and commissions is a very important job the mayor does. One of the charter amendments says that the Blue Ribbon Committee should be set up sort of to screen people, to make recommendations to the mayor. The top 3 people would be given to you to make decisions. How do you feel? Do you feel comfortable with that, or would you rather recruit the people for these boards and commissions?
No, I think it's a good idea to have a separate commission or a separate group that makes those recommendations.
Okay, I'll pass to the next person.
Great, Kai?
You got to turn your mic on, Mr.
You're muted, Kai.
Sorry about that. Do you believe that over-tourism will negatively impact the quality of Maui's tourism industry in the future? What tools would you utilize?
Yes, but I think more than impact tourism, I think they'll impact the lives of the local people that are here. It's already happening. I think over-tourism occurs when tourists go out of the areas that they were intended to remain in. And, it's hard to keep people in a particular area, a geographic area. But I think, we know when Kaanapali was built, the idea was the tourists would be a resort area for them to enjoy. And I think repeat visitors, they might like that once or twice, but after a while, they want to get out into the community. And I think that's part of what we see impact our locals, especially the road to Hana. And the reason that we have to have a reservation to go up into Haleakala now, at least in the morning. So I think we already know and we already experienced the impact. Yes, I think the Maui Nui destination plan brought a lot of stakeholders together to try to try to come up with a better way of managing tourism. And I don't think we can cap tourists. That I've heard that used, but I think we can limit or set up activities being, having a limit on activities, and that would probably be one of the ideas I would support.
Let me follow up with that question, Kai, if you don't mind. One of the proposals has been by several of the big tourist industry advocates is let's lengthen the runway so planes can come in from further away, nonstop from Tokyo or from Toronto or wherever it might be. That was a big argument back in the 90s. And I think many people would say, thank goodness, imagine if that had happened. How do you feel about that? If the airline industry or the State Department of Transportation came to you and said, we're thinking of lengthening Kahalui's runway to allow for longer flights?
I would not be in favor of expanding or extending the runway. I was not in favor of it when it came up the first time around, and I haven't changed my mind. And I think you just pointed out, Dick, that we can bring more than enough tourists to this island just with the runway we have now. So it's not like we think. Now, the only good argument about lengthening runway, and I will agree with this one argument, is that it could be safer for planes to land. If it was made for that purpose, not to allow larger planes to come, but to make it safer, because I've been on a couple of flights, having flown so many times, like probably all of you, where there've been a couple where you think maybe we could have used an extra 10 feet of runway on this one. Just because the weather in Kahalui is, the wind can really affect I had a guy just, honestly, the last time I came in, he had to take off again. He came down, he couldn't make it. He went back up in the air. And that's only happened maybe twice in my whole lifetime here. But he ran out of runway and he had to take off again and come back around one more time. So, that's the only good reason.
Yeah, the problem has been that when runways get lengthened, they do bring in bigger planes, and unfortunately, unfortunately, the county has no authority to stop that. So, which
is why I said that would be the only good reason to do it, but I don't think we should do it.
If I could follow up, so we understand that we can't limit how many people are coming here. So really, that brings us to what controls that we do have, and that really is the accommodations. So why would you?
No, that's not the only one. That's not the only one. The price of airline tickets is what can be determinative of that. When they started making $89 fares, you started seeing a different level of traveler come.
Excuse me. So if you were mayor, you would limit the amount that the airlines could charge to come here. I just didn't think that the county had control over that, but we do have control over accommodations. And so why would you not support one tool that we have, or would you support one tool that we do have, and that is limiting accommodations for tourists?
But you see, I didn't say that the county could affect the airline prices. I was disagreeing with you with saying that there was no other way to do it. I think if the industry regulated itself, that could have an impact on the number of tourists who would come to an island, because that's when we started seeing the big increase, is when prices started dropping. And of course, the county can't affect that. Of course not.
So I'm asking specifically on things that the county does have control over, which is tourist accommodations.
Yeah,
Would you support that, and why not?
I think we have enough hotels on Maui, if that's your direct question. But I don't think building any more hotels is keeping tourists from coming to Maui, because this just hasn't been the case. I don't see the correlation, and I don't see that it's actually shown up that way.
So what would you do to limit tourists?
I think the broader question is the number of accommodations, not tourists, timeshare, or any one category, but limiting.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, maybe that's probably a better approach. But again, all that happened, because we have less hotel rooms now than we had 20 years ago. We have less hotel rooms, and we have way more tourists. So that wasn't what was keeping tourists away or bringing them here. That's all I'm trying to say. That's just the data. The data doesn't support that. So what happens is It's the illegal vacation rentals that, to answer your question, Mr. Shiki, is what the county can enforce and the county should enforce is
Okay,
illegal
so
vacation rentals. That's what I think.
okay, so thanks for bringing that up. The planning department has reported that there are less than 200 illegal short-term rentals, and that they have been very effective at removing illegal short-term rentals from the market. So why would you not look at the permitted accommodations for tourists and limit that?
Limit because they're permitted. So if they're permitted, they're allowed. It's the illegal ones that aren't allowed. That's the only ones the county can. In fact, you can't close down a legitimate business if they follow the rules.
But you can cap them at the current level that they are at.
Okay.
And that is what is proposed. So you would not support that? Limiting them at what they currently are?
Okay, so that wasn't what I thought you asked earlier, but I think we have enough hotels. I'll say that again.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. Mr. Mayor?
No,
you were following up?
I was just going to say the question is, in terms of limiting the new accommodations would be the question. And you've, I think, clear you said just hotels, but the question would be, would you prevent new timeshares, more condominiums that would be rented out, et cetera, from going online? I think you've answered it indirectly.
I don't know how to answer if somebody is doing it correctly and legally. If you're asking me, how would you limit someone who has a legal permit to rent out their unit for short term? I would rather they not do that. I would rather people turn them into long-term rentals for our residents. I mean, that's obviously the need. But I don't know how you tell somebody they can't run a business if they're allowed to do it. I just don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
No, by just, there are some efforts being made by people to build units that could be used in the future as rentals. And the county could say, no, these have to be long-term in their conditions when they give the building permit or whatever it might be. Those kinds of constraints on increasing the number of visitor accommodations.
I understand what you're saying now on that. And yeah, of course, I would consider that.
Okay.
That limit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Lucienne probably is.
Yep, Lucienne next.
Hi, have you asked all your questions you were going to ask on Dix? Yeah, good. All right. So my last question is about another thing that's I think very important to our community, and that's funding for preservation areas, whether they are wetlands, areas that have high cultural value, areas that are utilized by our communities for recreation, but not publicly owned. So if you were elected mayor, what kind of approach would you take? We have open space funds, but we can also put additional funds in our budget. So if you proposed a budget, would you have a way of reaching out to find out what would be the most supported in terms of open space and cultural preserves and things like biological areas like wetlands that really need to come under county purview and be protected?
I think a lot of those lands are already protected, at least on the books. What we have to do a better job of, Lucienne, is describing, defining, or delineating these locations, because what happens is you get into a disagreement over whether or not they fall into the category you're talking about, whether they actually are recognized as wetlands or are they not wetlands, just to use that example. And so what I think in a Bissen administration, what would happen is every decision, all the stuff we're talking about tonight, we'd have to take into account the social, the economic, and the environmental impact that those decisions have with a cultural overlay. That's what I think needs to happen. You used sort of a broad example of, sacred areas, culturally significant areas. I suppose you're talking about maybe Vahipana, and of course, areas that fall into certain protected areas. Yes, I would definitely want that to be a part of our administration, and ability to consider that in our, whether it's our budget or our policies, our approach, our what we would want to educate or inform our directors about, what we would want to discuss with commissioners on whatever boards they are, to be culturally sensitive and aware. I would hope is part of every administration. I would hope, but yeah, I think that's clearly what I'd like to see.
Well, to clarify, I am speaking specifically of places that have no protection. They are proposed for significant development. You have Phase 9 of Maui Lani. You have places in Makena that are subject to lawsuit right now because
Right.
many of the cultural sites are slated to be destroyed, and those that are going to be remaining are landscape features in someone's backyard. So they've gone through the process, they've gone through the proper process, but our system's broken. And the most meaningful thing we can do is be prepared to actually purchase places and recognize, have our citizens, will to recognize their worth, even if the local landowners or the current landowners don't recognize their worth. So what would be the mechanism for this? It seems like we do have some funding coming up through increased TAT. We have an open space fund, but is there more that can be done to make sure that these lands are protected, loved, cared for, and passed on as our legacy?
Without knowing any more detail, I don't want to just speak off the top of my head, Lucian, and I apologize. I think I know some of what you're talking about. I'm pretty sure I know exactly what you're talking about. But I think we have to respect our processes if they are in place. I mean, unless they have been ignored or not followed. I don't think we can say, well, let the process follow, but if we disagree with the decision, then we manipulate it somehow, because then we lose our credibility that way, and it just creates another problem. I mean, I think if there's an area that is not good from the beginning, then that's what we have to do, and not have it go through all these steps and hoops, and at the end say, well, we just don't want it anyway. I think what I want to focus on are those areas that are not in controversy, because I want to build homes for local people. I mean, I make no secret of that. I know that's not what you're discussing right now, but I want to be real clear. I want us to find those places that are not controversial so that we can make homes for local people. It's as simple as that. As far as areas that people want preserved and maybe don't own the land, and your suggestion is the county should just buy it so that it stays that way. Well, there's lots of lands that we do that for already. And if these lands you're talking about fall into that category, then we have a history of doing that. This county, buying open space, preserving it, conservation. But I want to talk about building homes for local people. That's what I want to focus on when I get in office.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Bissen, I will ask the very last question then, and that has to do with somewhat of the bottom line. There's been an awful lot of concern from our voters about the amount of money that you've been receiving in campaign donations from Oahu, especially, and other places. But again, the concern is that that money will influence some type of decisions, certainly about our future. I think that if we look at past administrations, certainly sometimes big money does have influence. And so there's a big concern there and about that. Could you just address that concern?
Sure. I'm not a weak person. I'm a strong person of strong character. So I'm not somebody who can be influenced by someone because they give me something. People donate to my campaign because they either know me, they know of me, they know people who know me. Yeah, there are people from all over the state and outside the state that donate money. Some of them are people that I know from my days in school. In fact, several that I went to college with, or people that I practiced law with, or that I've known from my work in Honolulu. You know, to assume that if someone gives you a donation that somehow means that they can influence you, then you may as well say that about every denomination, whatever amount that someone gives you, because whatever they think is of value to them that they've given to you, even in the smallest amounts, they would feel that they have that some sort of influence. But I think people who really know me understand what I stand for and the kind of history I have, and I'm easy to go find out about. If you want to see if I have any history of doing anything that you think is untoward, or, you know, I'm the only guy who's ever run for this office who's actually prosecuted people for corruption or have spoken out against it or done things about it. But, you know, people who don't know me will suspect what they suspect. I'm not sure anything I say could change that. But people who do know me can speak to that. And so the only thing I can say is that I have a strong character that was instilled in me, and that I appreciate the people who have donated money to me, but they haven't donated it to me because they think they've somehow bought me or have some advantage over someone who hasn't donated to me. And again, I have a record that people can look at. I think people give money to candidates for all kinds of reasons. They want to see you win. They agree with your platform. They like you better than the other person. I mean, there's so many reasons that people do things. Some people give to both sides, or, you know, sort of cover their bets, I suppose. But, you know, I think that's more of a comment on the person giving it than the person receiving it, in my opinion. So I don't, you know, I don't apologize for people who have chosen to support my campaign. And again, the people who give it for all sorts of reasons, not for the same reasons. Some people might like the issue, the position you take on one issue. Somebody else maybe another. People trust you. They trust your decision. They want to see good governance. There are a lot of people that live in Honolulu that have business interests right here in Maui. So whoever the mayor of Maui is will influence some of their business interests here too. So, I mean, whether it's personal or business, I can't tell you why every single person donates, but I can just tell you what that means to me.
Great. So thank you for that response. And is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like our audience to know? Is there anything that that you feel that you'd like to express as a concluding statement?
Let me reword that question. Is there a question you wish we had asked you that we didn't ask?
I think you came up with a lot of great questions today. So I appreciate that you gave me this opportunity to share my thoughts and my views. But what I want to say to the voters is please register. I want to say that I'm guessing the folks that watch your programs are registered voters. I'd like people to register to vote. And, you know, my future, as I've said to others, does not depend on this job, but the future of my grandchildren, your grandchildren, and generations to come does. I think we need a leader who looks not just for the next cycle, the next 2 years or 4 years, and somehow in campaigning and politicking, but we need people who look 2 generations ahead and plant that tree today for whose shade you may never experience. That's what I'm hoping to do with your help and the help of your viewers. You know, I ask for that opportunity. I ask for your vote on November 8th, or even before that when you get your ballots. And, you know, come to our events. We're going to hold a lot of community events again. Please come to our events, ask questions, and engage. So thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Rick. And thank you for all our interviewers. And If those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, you can get this interview on Akaku, but also on MauiPonoNetwork.org. So if there's, again, please become an informed voter. We've had a very poor turnout for the primary, of only 34.8% of those returning their ballots who received it. So please be an informed voter. And if you know people who that hasn't voted, please encourage them to get out and vote and listen to these interviews so that they can become informed voters. Mahalo.
Thank you.